Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Fringe North podcast. I'm Caitlin Townsend. My pronouns are she and her, and I am the project coordinator for this year's festival. And I have with me today Thomas. Thomas, would you like to introduce yourself to our viewers and talk a little bit about what your submission for the festival is this year?
Yes, my name is Thomas Meacham. I'm director of the Arts Center at Lake Superior State University and also a theater professor. And this year we are submitting the proposal by Anton Chekhov. And it's a fascinating piece by Chekhov. Usually when you think of Chekhov, you think of really brooding and where things don't necessarily happen. They want to go to Moscow, but they don't. This is a farce. This is Chekhov, a very different kind of Chekhov piece. It's called The Proposal, and it's all centered around a proposal that goes awry and all the shenanigans that happen as a result of that. And so it's a fun piece, particularly for students who are just feeling so downtrodden with a pandemic and trying to perform. We were hoping that this was going to be a live performance, even if it was somewhat modified, but then it turned out that that wasn't indeed possible. So then we translated into the film format. And that was a really interesting kind of move into a different way of presenting the material. We worked on this for about 4 weeks, rehearsing it as a stage play and really thinking of this as something that we're going to perform on the stage. Then when we realized this wasn't going to be possible, we needed to find a location. And one of the students happened to be staying in this beautiful Victorian house. And so we got really lucky. And so before we were trying to see, could we do it in a black box theater? We really have to kind of make it look authentic. It wasn't going to seem to work as a film. And so, or a filmed project. So this really happenstance of working in this Victorian house that had all of the old furniture and various props that the owner of the house just kind of tucked away, we brought out. So then we had to revise it. We had to work within the space. Scenes that were blocked one way, suddenly we had to let go of that blocking. And but we had a lot of fun kind of putting that together in a very new way. It is something from the 19th century. And so we did take a translation, an English translation by Julius West from 1889, and we adapted it. We made it a little bit slightly more contemporary because some of the things were a little bit archaic. But what Chekhov does so well is they call each other these really ridiculous names. And so we found one that was one of our favorites was the pettifogger, which means it's a sort of a sketchy lawyer. but that was the one that gives people the gasp of air. And I can't believe you called me a pettifogger. But things like that, we added our own little touches. And as a process, I needed the students to really engage with the material. So we did a lot of improv and things that would allow them to kind of access who these characters are. There's a father, a daughter, and the neighbor, the hypochondriac neighbor. And the neighbor is the one who's coming to propose out of the blue. And so the obstacles or the complications are related to just really trivial matters. So usually with Chekhov, it's all about subtext. So there's something at the surface level and then the substratum. And it's those two things that are constantly kind of battling. And you really see like, oh, what they're saying isn't necessarily what they're meaning or what the circumstances are dictating. In this farce, it's all surface. It's all the surface level. And they get into arguments over property lines and come to fisticuffs over which dog is better. Squeezer or Guess, these two ridiculous names. So it's those kinds of things that unravel, and then in the end, it's a happy ending with the two coming together. But all the shenanigans, we had a lot of fun with.
Yeah, it sounds like a lot of fun. So what was that process like? Because it's a fairly large group by the sounds of it. So having to shift from that stage environment and to create a film, and then essentially you're bringing on even more students when you switch to the film because you need people to be shooting it and
Right.
editing and all those things. So how do you manage all of that, and how did that shift the process of what the work initially was to what it is now in its final form?
Well, up to this point, we really only had like a theater program. And so this actually initiated, in some ways, the film program that now is going to hopefully continue. So we
Nice.
had students that were interested in film, but we never had anything kind of solidified. So
Mhm.
I then put on a different hat and then started a film program. Like, well, guess we're going to do this now. So we got some of basic film equipment. We got a hold of a Black Magic cinema camera, which I really do love, and you can shoot
Mhm.
in Black Magic RAW, which is very forgiving in terms of making mistakes, so that if you don't have the white balance correct or any kind of color, you can really fix most anything in post. Our
Nice.
biggest obstacle was audio, and that was a learning curve for all of us in terms of when I blocked it. It was so physical. Students at one point, the hypochondriac is crawling out of the house. He can't get out quick enough, and they're pulling him back, and it's all this like physical shenanigans, and how to capture that audio so it doesn't get the echo of the room. That was a challenge. We had a boom mic, and we were trying to also teach students how to boom
Yeah.
and move it out of so it didn't get in the shot. But then if you just touch the boom a little bit, it just travels up, and
Oh
then
yeah,
you're
for
hearing
sure.
this boom, boom. I'm like, what is that? What's that noise?
Mhm.
Oh, so yeah, it was a learning. So there's still some of that in this. But it was fun for all of us because we were all learning just on the spot of how do we create a film. I know how to do a stage production, but the film was new for all of us. So yeah, we did bring some students on board, and all of us were novices. I did end up editing in addition to shooting and directing. So I had the camera and kind of doing this. So
Nice.
it was a lot of that.
Yeah,
But
sounds like a lot of new skills gained in the experience, that's for sure.
yeah, absolutely.
Mhm. Yeah, that sounds really
Um,
exciting.
yeah, and so I think that if it was also kind of a collaborative project. I think that with the pandemic, what has been interesting over the past year and a half is that in many ways, like I'm a very kind of traditional, theater director, but I've now moved more experimental
Mhm.
because of all, like the first production I was doing was The Importance of Being Earnest, and that was shut down right after the pandemic started. So then we did a Zoom version, and then finding all the possibilities of Zoom, kind of people popping up, going down, and all this, and looking at each other across as if they were actually talking to one another, poking each other. All
Mhm.
these things we could like learn within the format. And then I decided, well, with the next project, we'll do a devised theater piece. We'll do something that is going to adapt to the circumstances. And so that was based on Boccaccio's Decameron. And so something that was based on experiences of them during the pandemic in the 14th century, and telling each other stories to entertain one another during this rough time, which is very much what we're doing today. And so it
Mhm.
seemed like material that then the students could then, for that, I had them do a lot of playwriting. How do we take this classic text from the Middle Ages and create a play? And then how do we do that with masks and socially distance
Mhm.
for an audience of like 20? So all these kinds of challenges. So things that I would never have done before. It's interesting. The pandemic has really kind of cracked open my directorial toolbox,
Mhm.
so doing so many different things I would never have kind of, I would have done really a very tight traditional, hopefully decent, but not kind of looking for other ways of presenting the material. And that's been exciting as finding,
Mhm.
and even now going into the film realm, which we're going to then kind of build hopefully a film festival every spring. So yeah,
That's exciting.
you
That's
never know. You do a pandemic and
yeah,
everything changes.
for sure. That sounds like a lot of fun. In terms of students coming together from a lot of different backgrounds, and I'm guessing because you didn't actually have the film program before, you kind of pulled from some different departments there and uh,
Right.
brought them all together. So what does that collaboration process look like? Obviously, as the director, you have final say over things, but how much do the students contribute in different ways and just bringing forth those ideas, especially with all these new tools that are out there now in the COVID environment? And
Right.
it seems like every time you have a conversation with someone, you find out about something new or some new platform or trick or tip to use. So I'm just wondering how that works and how that all comes together, and how much contribution there is from the team as a whole.
So we have, yeah, students from so many different majors that are involved. We have a lot of actually engineering students and education students, early education. And so it's interesting to see, and creative writing. So the creative writers could obviously help kind of modify the text, but it's and the education students really like the play of it. They liked the improv and trying to, and then our engineering students were able to kind of bring in that expertise and really did want to get, dial into. So for this audio bit, how close do we need to get the and we need those people that really love the minutia of the technical aspects, which I do not. So having that kinds of like those aspects, it was interesting. We have a theater minor, but we're building a theater major. So all of our students are from various academic disciplines, but it's a really fascinating mix of who did come through and people that I think because of adding different components to it, students that wouldn't have been a part of the process were starting to be intrigued, like
Mhm.
Bethany, who was one of the ones who was working with our audio and booming many of the scenes. She's interested in going into like aerospace, engineering and looking at various, and so she's always interested in NASA and going in those kinds of projects, but seeing how theater is going to help her communicate these ideas. You need the Carl Sagans of the world who can actually speak about the beauties of science. And so seeing these intersections with all these various disciplines, I think that only strengthens things. And that's what we're
For
always
sure.
amazed at where they're coming from. But yeah, we had an influx of people, of students from so many different disciplines because of the circumstances. And that's been exciting. Yeah.
Yeah, that's beautiful to see some good come out of the pandemic too, because we can get really
Right.
caught up in what we're missing out on, but things like potentially having a film program now, and that
Right.
probably wouldn't have existed prior to the pandemic. So it's
Yeah.
amazing. Um, yeah, so has the group been involved in the festival before, or is this the first year that?
Well, I think Spencer Christensen, my predecessor, he was involved with the Fringe Festival.
Mhm.
I believe, like 3 or 4 years back, but it's been a while since we've kind of, and then I'm fairly new. I've been here 2 years, this is starting my third year. So yeah, we're trying to reconnect too with
Yeah.
various, yeah, arts institutions that are local and that are, and that's what we're also submitting the proposal to the Sioux Film Festival. But we are kind of just seeing like getting our stuff out there and students involved in this and seeing that art isn't just, yeah, something that's right here. It is something to be shared, something to be experienced
Mhm.
beyond beyond even country borders. So hopefully.
Yeah, for sure. That's awesome, and we're very grateful to have you as part of the festival this year. So it's really exciting. Um, yeah, I think one thing about the pandemic too is that it's really brought people's awareness to the arts and how much it really is needed, and that it's not just this little thing in a corner that we do in our spare time. Like it's integrated into so much of our lives, and you don't really start to realize that until you're shut away from all of that and how much of an impact it
Right.
has. Mm.
Right. Yeah, they're everyone's sort of like desperate for something to come together an audience again and laugh together as an audience and not just kind of watch something remote like on Netflix. That isn't the same experience.
Mhm.
And so uh, I know that's what we're going to add to our programming in the fall. We're going to have more student-based sort of activities, maybe various exhibitions, things that bring people again, not even like formal necessarily programming, but just a professor we know who plays the guitar really well and just having him do a night of just playing music and just people coming to watch that happen. I mean, just getting people to congregate again
Mhm.
and experience whatever form of art that we can do so. I think, yeah, there's a hunger for it, and it is the community, and hopefully there is a renewed appreciation for the arts because of this, for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, so what can festival goers expect from this piece, and why should they attend this particular show in of all the options that are in the festival this year?
Well, it's completely silly and goofiness
Yeah.
that of just person just getting so anxious about proposing, and we don't necessarily even learn why he just decided on this day. He's in his 30s now. He feels like he should be married, but it's all this just kind of ridiculousness that doesn't have any consequence, and ultimately a romantic ending. So I think that just for the fun, light summer fare of and seeing students who I think do a really good job. Two of them, one is the one who plays the female love interest is a freshman, and so this is her first time really coming into this arena, certainly doing college theater, but also film itself. And all of them had never done a film before. So
Mhm.
you're seeing very kind of new talent, but they do so surprisingly well. I'm very proud of what they've actually accomplished particularly during these times. Two of
Mhm.
them were roommates, so that did help with our whole COVID, and we did
Yeah.
rigorous testing just like all the athletes. So we were making sure that was so they are maskless, but we were constantly kind of monitoring that. But and that's also why we kept the cast down. But yeah, but it's a fun, goofy, light, happy, which I think everyone's sort of ready for.
Yeah, that's awesome. So very much a comedy-based show. Um,
Absolutely. Yes.
yeah. So in terms of leading this project and just, I'm wondering like what growth you saw in your students over the course of start to finish with a project, because I feel like that's always a large part of these group experiences and how that changes throughout the process.
Right. It was sort of this ownership of the material. So at
Mm,
first it was seen as kind of this, yeah, very antiquated Chekhov, and then kind of saying the words. But I remember in rehearsal was this pivotal moment of doing some improvs. I'm like, all right, let's get away from the script. And then what do you want in this scene? What are you trying to go after? Okay, use your own words. Let's just kind of go through this and getting them to really shift into really embodying this and finding the humor that each one of them, I think, was surprised that they actually are funny, that they didn't ever see themselves that way.
mhm.
And so and I, of course, ruined several takes because then I would start laughing, and then we, all right,
Yeah.
cut, let's try that again, and I'll try not to laugh. But finding that humor that they are able to contribute, that's like not necessarily written in the script. And so
Mhm.
feeling beholden to something like a Shakespeare, like a Chekhov, Ibsen, these big playwrights that seem to have these expectations, kind of putting that aside and being able to find their own, that was probably the most, yeah, rewarding kind of arc that they eventually did
Yeah.
find, I think.
Yeah, so bringing their unique characteristics into those characters and um, making
Right.
it their own role. Sounds great.
Yeah.
I'm really excited to see it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So sorry, go ahead.
I'm
Um,
just yeah, I hope if you do enjoy it, because it was a lot of, because of the filming aspect, it did actually then take on like what something that would be just like 4 or 5 weeks perhaps to rehearsal, then going into production ended up being twice as long. So that
mm,
was the only kind of downside, was the actual process did take that much longer. But ultimately then we have something, I think, that's much more preserved and could be
mhm.
shared with parents that were far away and various relatives, so they could see what Alex or Sam was up to.
Yeah, that is such a nice addition because I know so many students, when you are away from home, you miss out on that element of having your own community see these things. And now with everything going digital, that there's that option. So it's wonderful.
Right, right. Yeah.
Yeah. So what are you most excited about in terms of being part of the festival this year?
Oh, I think the connection across the water, like
Yeah.
I feel like we have been so, and particularly with the borders being closed, it feels like we've been so shut off.
Yeah.
When
Yes.
I first moved to the Sioux, I was like, oh, it's so great because then you can go over to Canada. It's 5 minutes away. It's no problem. But having that closed border, wow, it really did kind of isolate you. And
Hmm.
so being able to reach out across and also feel connected with an arts organization that's really vibrant and doing new, innovative on the ground work, that's very exciting. And cultivating that once again is yeah, it's
Yeah.
very exciting.
Yeah, that community is so important and to just be connected and it's just like it's like family and then all of a sudden the borders are closed and we're like cut off and it just feels so weird and hard to
Right?
adjust to. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. So thank you so much for your time and for being willing to come on for a podcast. I really appreciate it. Is there anything else that you would like to share and want audience to know about the submission or about the students that you've worked with?
Um, I think, let's see. I think the what you'll also notice is that the students were trying to come up with different ways of presenting. So perhaps a more traditional style film, you'll see some angles. These were all kind of students
Mhm.
saying, what if we shot it from the ground? I'm like, let's try it. So
Nice.
and you will see some more experimental, like we're not filmmakers. And so we've kind of created something that is like a film, and we have certainly expectations now of what a film should be. So there might be some unconventional, different kind of shots because we just, let's do this when they're looking at the mirror and all you're seeing them is through the mirror. Okay, well, can we do this from this angle and do that? So we just were experimenting. At one point, the owl has a conversation. Was that written in the script? No. But we found this old stuffed owl. We thought that he's kind of such a kook that he would then have a conversation with the owl. So
Nice.
that became a part of it. So you'll notice these moments that might work or might be just very strange, but hopefully you'll enjoy it.
Yeah, they sound very exciting and very unique, which I always love seeing those unique little tidbits thrown in there, and I think it's just wonderful. So I'm looking forward to it. But yeah, well, thank you so much for your time, and thank you to our audience for taking the time to tune in and watch. The festival is running from August 19th to 22nd, so make sure you plug in and buy a ticket. And yeah, it's going to be a really wonderful, unique digital festival this year. So thank you, miigwech, merci, and gracias for tuning in, and we'll see you all again soon. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you for watching our podcast. Merci, miigwech, gracias. If you like what we're doing, you can support Fringe North and the artists involved in this year's festival financially so that we can continue this work. Visit www.fringenorth.ca to find out more.